Well, I want to thank Sarah for, first of all, hosting this event. And the Endowment for Middle East Truth does such phenomenal work here on Capitol Hill. And I look at Sarah as a modern-day Esther, a modern-day Deborah. I really do. For such a time as this. So thank God for Sarah, your organization, what you're doing, and thank you for having me here. And thank you for going through the book in one afternoon, I have to say. You know, when you get done a book, you don't want to look at it. If you write it, you spend a year with it. You say, oh, this book, it put me through heck. But I think people are reading it. In fact, I know people are reading it because this is really the first book since the so-called Arab Spring broke out that gets into detail about the main player in the Arab Spring, which I refer to as the Islamist winter in the book. So, actually, Sarah, I have to say, I don't even know why we're having this event because the Muslim Brotherhood's done. They're gone. They're out of power in Egypt. We don't have to worry about them anymore. This is just a post-mortem. The Brotherhood, they're in the ash heap of history. If only it were so, folks. Look, the Muslim Brotherhood has been down this road before, as I document in the book. In the early 1950s, the Muslim Brotherhood, its leaders, were killed, executed, imprisoned. The group was banned for decades. Its headquarters in Cairo was burnt to the ground, completely suppressed by the Egyptian military, sort of like what's happening now. But like jihadi vampires, they refuse to die. And they're back. And they came back so far that they actually seized the reins of power in Egypt for a year. Thank God it was only a year. Yet it appears that our administration is already wistful for that year of Muslim Brotherhood rule. A year, as a matter of fact, in which, and folks, this tells you something about the Muslim Brotherhood and what totalitarian fanatics they are. During that year in power, Mohammed Morsi and his minions basically chose enforcing Sharia law, covering women from head to toe, persecuting Christians and harassing Jews. They chose that over feeding their people. Now it's interesting because we had the largest demonstrations in human history a few weeks ago when Morsi was ousted. And a lot of the people in the streets then likely voted for Mohammed Morsi just a year ago. Now that tells us two things. Number one, Egypt right now is a schizophrenic society, practically ungovernable. This is think about it, 2.5 massive revolutions in the span of just 2 years. Now, the other thing it tells you is when your stomach is grumbling, you will get out into the streets and you will protest. A lot of the people, I'm sure, in the streets of those protests probably agreed with Morsi's vision for Egypt, Sharia law for one and all, whether you like it or not. But Egypt right now, and look, it's a serious thing because this is the most influential, the most populous Arab nation. Egypt, by many accounts, may be on the brink of famine, of starvation. Their economy is in the toilet right now. Tourism, which is the lifeblood of the Egyptian economy, it's done with all this chaos. So what we have, and why us, you, we over here should care about what happens over there. Number one, I don't believe the Muslim Brotherhood will go quietly. The Brotherhood, think about it. 84 years they waited, and they waited, and they moved in the shadows, and they worked stealthily to gain power in Egypt. 84 years, and they finally got it. Finally they had it. Their vision of a Sharia state in Egypt, war with the hated Zionist entity, aggression against the West. It was about to come to fruition. The restoration of the caliphate, which we'll talk about in a moment. And after 1 year, it was suddenly and violently wrenched away from them. Now, does anyone in this room, thank God, by the way, does anyone in this room really believe that the Muslim Brotherhood is going to say, well, you know, we gave it a good shot. You know, we tried democracy. It didn't work out. We gave it a sporting chance, but we'll be back next year. There's always next year. Does anyone really believe these guys are going to go away quietly? Remember the motto. It reads in part. This is the Muslim Brotherhood's founding motto, and I have to tell you, I've been studying this group for 12 years, and it's to the point I can recite their founding motto in my sleep. But I don't sleep when I recite it. I have nightmares because it reads in part, folks, and this is the essence of this group. Jihad is our way. Dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. I repeat, jihad is our way, not spiritual yoga. jihad, military conquest is our way, our reason for being, dying, martyrdom. Example, suicide bombing is our highest hope. This is who they are. Where I'm from in Philadelphia, we say, hey, it is what it is. That's what they are. It's who they are. And when Muslim Brotherhood leaders darken the halls of the White House, darken the halls of Congress, meeting with our leaders, they still live by this motto. It has never changed. Jihad is our way. It has never changed. This is who they are. So with a motto like that, with a group that glorifies murder and mayhem, even though they wear expensive Armani suits, which we'll discuss, do you really think they're going to go away quietly? There are groups in Egypt that are even more radical than the Muslim Brotherhood, and that's saying something. Now, the Brotherhood already is calling for martyrdom. We had a Brotherhood spokesman last week saying, we are willing to die for our cause. The Brotherhood's also calling for protests at the American Embassy in Cairo. Now, the last time there were Islamist protests at our embassy in Cairo, it was stormed on the anniversary of 9/11, and the black flag of Al-Qaeda was raised above it. Mohammed Morsi was strangely silent about that for a few days. I'm sure he was preoccupied. Until he was pressured by the Obama administration, who said, hey, you're making us look bad. We've been in with you from the beginning. Hey guys, remember my infamous Cairo speech back in 2009? When my administration personally requested that you be there. We wanted the Brotherhood there. You are the future of Egypt. Come on, you're making me look bad, President Obama says. And now, apparently, we want the Brotherhood back. We're sending a message, the Obama administration says. Just yesterday, they talked about banning the sale of F-16s to the Egyptian military. They're going to pull that deal off the table. Why? Because Mohammed Morsi was so rudely ushered out. And heaven forbid the Egyptian military says, hey, we don't want the Muslim Brotherhood involved in the next government. That whole jihad, Sharia thing didn't work out so well. But the Obama administration says, no, no, no. You must have the Brotherhood involved. Don't you know? The Muslim Brotherhood are moderates. Why, they're Democrats. In fact, they wear suits and ties. They speak in very moderate tones. They're actually quite charming. You know, in my book, I lay out my first-hand encounters with these individuals, Muslim Brotherhood operatives around the world. I've traveled, I've been in their homes, I've been in their offices, I've been in their mosques, and I've been in their enclaves. And folks, I can tell you, these guys are good. They're bad, but they're good at what they do. The Armani suits, the wavy hair, the designer eyeglasses. They support democracy. They'll keep the peace treaty with the Zionist entity, not Israel. The Zionist entity. Even the most quote-unquote moderate Muslim Brotherhood talking heads call it the Zionist entity. They say all the right things, and I have to tell you, if you're a naive Western leader, Western opinion maker, Western journalist, and you sit down with these guys, you really want to like them, you know? Gosh, he seems so reasonable. Maybe we can use him as a counterweight to the really bad guys in Al-Qaeda. We can use the Brotherhood. They're not blowing anyone up yet. Oh, actually, their Palestinian wing is Hamas, which self-identifies itself as the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. But they're just killing Jews, so we don't have to worry about them, even though they've also killed American citizens. Do not forget. So, our leaders see the Brotherhood. They say we can work with these guys. They say all the right things. Folks, look, this is a disastrous policy in so many ways. It's gotten us in such hot water, especially in Egypt right now. And here's what you need to remember. Here's why every American watching right now, listening right now, needs to know about the Muslim Brotherhood. Without the birth of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt in 1928, there would be no war on terror right now. As a matter of fact, without the Muslim Brotherhood, there would have been no 9/11. I know that might shock some people. I say it without hesitation and without reservation. This is the granddaddy of them all when it comes to modern Islamic terrorist groups. They spawned Al-Qaeda, did the Muslim Brotherhood. They created Hamas. And it's no coincidence that the men behind 9/11, from Osama bin Laden, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ayman al-Zawahiri, before they joined, before they formed Al-Qaeda, guess which group they belonged to? The Muslim Brotherhood. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that the Muslim Brotherhood is the gateway drug to Islamic terrorism and to jihad. You want to understand all this mayhem going on in the world right now? And why we're up against the wall with this war on terror, this long struggle, this existential struggle to Judeo-Christian Western civilization. And I'm saying that in the capital. Look, they don't like to hear that. Truth is at a premium. But that's what's going on. If you want to understand what we're up against, you have to understand this group. It started with them. And look, to be very politically incorrect, which you may have noticed I have no problem doing, they had plenty of theological ammo to back up their ideology. And that's a fact. So, Muslim Brotherhood founder Hassan al-Banna forms this group in 1928 in Egypt. He's crestfallen, he's devastated that the Islamic Caliphate has collapsed. Now, what is the Caliphate? Funny sounding word, every American needs to know it. The Caliphate. Picture a united Muslim states. Picture every Muslim nation united economically, politically, militarily, speaking with one strong voice at the UN against Israel, against America, controlling a good supply of the world's oil, and perhaps, if things keep progressing or regressing the way they've been, being nuclear armed, if Pakistan, if, God forbid, Iran wants to join the club. So this is what you have, and this is what you're looking at, and that's why the Muslim Brotherhood was founded in their essence to revive this caliphate. Look, this was a great tragedy to Islamists far and wide in 1924 when the caliphate collapsed. It existed for centuries under the Turkish-led Ottoman Empire. Not to get too in the weeds, but you need to know it's a bad thing, is the bottom line. And that's why they were founded. That's what they want to restore. From the beginning, Hassan al-Banna. And I've interviewed his grandson, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. If you read the book in chapter 3, the title is called A History of Violence. Not of moderation, not of dialogue and diplomacy, violence. Jihad is our way, and they stuck to it from the beginning, with Hassan al-Banna giving speeches imploring his followers to sacrifice their lives for Allah. Nothing is higher, nothing is greater than martyrdom. He ingrained this into the consciousness of his followers. Started out with 7 people in a back room someplace in Egypt. By 1948, 20 years later, the Brotherhood had, between some estimates, between 1 million and 2 million members. That's in 20 years. Between 1 million and 2 million members, became the most powerful, most organized force in Egypt, and the most radical. From the beginning, you need to understand, caliphate, absolutely, we want it. Another vanguard, another bedrock of the Muslim Brotherhood's ideology, anti-Semitism. Not just the state of Israel, but the Jewish people as a whole. It's not just Israel, not just the Zionist entity. Every Jew walking the planet, the Brotherhood would like to see eradicated. Stakelbeck, that sounds very radical and very alarmist. You can't be serious. I lay out in meticulous detail in the book how Muslim Brotherhood leaders throughout the past 8 or 9 decades have talked about eradicating the Jews. I'll give you an example. A guy named Yusuf al-Qaradawi. It's a name you need to remember. He's probably the most influential Islamic cleric in the world. He's the Muslim Brotherhood's spiritual leader. And I've interviewed Brotherhood members who quote him verbatim. He's an icon in the Muslim Brotherhood world. And he said, our battle is not just against the state of Israel. It's not just between Egypt and Israel or a certain nation state in Israel. It's between all Jews and all Arabs till the day of judgment comes. And the Jews will be wiped off the map. It's not me saying it. It's Yusuf al-Qaradawi, the Muslim Brotherhood's most influential worldwide figure today, saying it. If you don't believe me, the book is meticulously footnoted. And it's a funny thing when you quote people out of their mouths. And it's also a funny thing because when people tell me they want to kill me and kill the Jewish people, I believe them. And I take them at their word. Hitler said the same thing in Mein Kampf in the 1920s. He was ignored and blown off. then he tried to make it a reality. The Muslim Brotherhood has been saying the same thing, and they try to enforce policies in their lone year in power in Egypt to make that a reality. From the beginning, the Muslim Brotherhood collaborated with the Nazis, collaborated with Hitler's minions and Hitler's war machine to extend the final solution from Europe into the Middle East and North Africa, to eradicate the Jews of the Middle East and North Africa. Collaborated closely with the Nazis, our new friends in the Middle East, folks, our new outreach partners. Participated, sent battalions in 1948 to assist in the invasion and the crushing of the fledgling state of Israel in 1948. The Brotherhood was on the ground, killing Jews in the revived state of Israel. By the early 1950s, they wanted the power in Egypt. Nasser had other ideas. A Jew-hater in his own right. But even he was threatened by the totalitarian vision of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I quote him in the book. He says they wanted to shut down movie theaters. They wanted to cover women from head to toe. It was horrible. The Brotherhood wanted to share power with Nasser until they could get full power, of course. That's the plan. They were crushed in the early 1950s, locked up, not before, I should say, they were through with assassinating Egyptian leaders, assassinating the Egyptian prime minister, causing a wave of terror, a campaign of terror and mayhem in Egypt. And by the way, in the late 1930s, early 1940s, burning synagogues to the ground, harassing Jews in the streets, leading pogroms, and publishing Nazi-style anti-Semitic propaganda. And you wonder why Mohammed Morsi, who, by the way, folks, you may not know this, he joined the Muslim Brotherhood, according to his wife, his better half, I suppose. He joined the Muslim Brotherhood not in Cairo, not in Alexandria. He joined the Muslim Brotherhood here, while he was a student at USC, the University of Southern California. But don't worry, don't get alarmed. The Muslim Brotherhood is not here in America. Actually, I lay out in the book that they're present in some 80 countries around the world. You think, well, they're squashed in Egypt, they've taken a setback in Egypt, that is their hub, and it's a big setback, make no mistake. But this is a global movement, and man, it has staying power. And by the way, why you should care about what happens over there in Egypt right now? Suppose the Brotherhood doesn't go quietly, and their Islamist, Salafist allies choose not to go quietly. Here's a scenario for you to chew on. Suppose they target the Suez Canal, where a good amount of the world's oil passes through the Middle East every day, up through the Suez on its way to Europe, America. Suppose they shut it down through an act of terror. What happens when you go to the pump every day? What happens to the global economy? Oil and gas prices skyrocket, you will feel it. And all of a sudden, the American people won't care what Kim Kardashian's baby is named. Yeah. They'll be paying attention to the Middle East. Suppose jihadists, sponsored by the Muslim Brotherhood, carry out attacks in the Sinai Peninsula. Now, I don't have a map, but just so you know, if you're watching, if you're listening, Egypt's Sinai Peninsula borders Israel. And over the past year, strangely enough, it's increased. It did increase under Mohammed Morsi. Just a coincidence, I'm sure. Attacks launched out of Sinai into Israel on a regular basis now. Now, if the Egyptian military doesn't want to get a handle on it, Morsi certainly didn't. Hopefully the Egyptian military does. If they don't want to get a handle on it, if there's a major attack launched out of Sinai, I don't know, but I think Israel may not stand pat and kind of take it on the chin. And folks, if there is a regional conflict, you will feel it. If Israel is forced to defend itself, because right now it's kind of like a vise crushing Israel in the middle. A regional war is coming. I know I'm a very fun guy, but I have to be honest with you. Is this a time to mince words, or is it a time to be bold, speak out, and tell the truth?
Yeah.
Amen. Especially here in the U.S. Capitol. People need to hear it. I see three potential triggers, folks, for a war in the Middle East. I see, number one, Egypt, the possibility of chaos, as I'm discussing, spilling over Egypt's borders. I see Syria. where, it's an interesting thing. On one hand, I see Al-Qaeda, the Muslim Brotherhood, and their associates. And on the other hand, I see Syria, the Assad regime, Hezbollah, and Iran. I have to tell you, and they're killing each other. My impulse is, have at it, boys. I have to tell you, I am devastated by the humanitarian disaster in Syria. 100,000 people killed. Horrible, horrific. But, man, when our greatest enemies have their guns trained on each other and not the Zionists and the Christians, well, let's see how this all plays out, guys. That's my impulse. And I don't mean to sound heartless, but I care about American interests first. And I personally don't see an interest in intervening in a conflict between jihadists. That's my personal opinion. Sort of educated, I guess. Syria, Egypt, and Iran. Iran's nuclear weapons program. These are the three potential triggers, folks. Of course, if Iran wants to activate Hezbollah, which has some 50 to 60,000 missiles and rockets aimed at every inch of the state of Israel, they're inclined to do so. So, if you think, thank you, sir, if you think that things are going to be quiet in the Middle East and we can be distracted with petty political squabbles here on Capitol Hill, and you think this is just going to go on indefinitely, and the Middle East will flare up here and there, and then it'll get better, and we'll broker some kind of peace, think again. Before it gets better, it's going to get worse. John Kerry's foray into diplomacy, notwithstanding. So, the likes of the Muslim Brotherhood, you have to understand, they can't strike a peace treaty with Israel. They can't do it, because then they wouldn't be the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a bedrock of their existence. Mohammed Morsi was captured on video 3 years ago, calling Jews the sons of apes and pigs, calling Israel the Zionist entity, saying there could never be peace with Israel. And by the way, in that same speech, and this was very overlooked, Mohammed Morsi talked about boycotting American goods. Yeah, our friend Morsi. Boycotting U.S. goods. Talked about the Zionist and American enemies. Enemies. That is how you and I are viewed by the Muslim Brotherhood. So, it's very interesting that now we're going to cancel that sale of F-16s to the Egyptian military. The time we should have done it was the year Morsi was in power. But now we're going to cancel. Now, I'm sure Morsi just wanted those F-16s just for deterrence's sake. What are we doing, folks? What are we doing? And thank God you're gathered here in the Capitol today. I see watchmen and watchwomen on the wall. Thank God. We got to tell the truth and speak about this, because the Muslim Brotherhood is here. And I'm not warning you and trying to scare you about boogeymen under the table. I document in my book their documents. Wrap your head around this. If you're listening at home or you're watching, our government has the Muslim Brotherhood strategic documents in its possession. We have it. This is the equivalent of during World War II having the Nazi game plan, during the Cold War having Stalin's game plan. In 2004, about a 10-minute drive from where we're sitting right now, Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., the FBI conducted a raid of a leading global Muslim Brotherhood / Hamas operative of his home, his peaceful suburban home, in a well-kept, tree-lined suburb of Northern Virginia. His name was Ismail al-Barassi, and it was very interesting. Beneath Ismail's basement was a hidden sub-basement. Now, I know it all sounds very James Bond, but bear with me because it's fact. And in that basement, our own FBI discovered 80 boxes of official Muslim Brotherhood documents. Quite a find. Written in Arabic. Now, when these documents were translated, turns out that they provided the game plan for the Muslim Brotherhood in America. One of the documents was titled An Explanatory Memorandum on the Movement in North America. I'm paraphrasing. And in it, And I quote, it said that the Muslim Brotherhood is here in America, quote, to destroy Western civilization from within. Oh, by its own miserable hand, were the final words. We are here to destroy Western civilization from within. The last time I checked, America was the leader of Western civilization, for now. So, in these strategic documents, 29 American Muslim groups are named. Leading American Muslim groups. It says these are our friends and the organizations of our friends. These are our peeps, these 29 groups. This is not me saying it, it's the Muslim Brotherhood saying it. And folks, I have to tell you, one of those groups was called the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA for short. Very intriguing group, I guess you could say. One of their leaders, Mohammed Majid. Now, not to get too in the weeds here with the names, but this is a name you need to know, Mohammed Majid. Now, his father was a leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Sudan. Now, Majid is kind of pushing the Brotherhood agenda here in Washington, D.C. Mohammed Majid is a leader of this group that the Muslim Brotherhood named in its own documents. And by the way, ISNA, one of our favorite outreach partners for the U.S. government, ISNA was named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the largest terrorism financing trial in American history. So is CARE. Has anyone heard of them? The Council on American Islamic Relations. This whole kind of alphabet soup of American Muslim civil rights organizations, so-called civil rights organizations, who claim to speak for the Muslim community in America and have bullied their way to the forefront. And I have to say, I talk about it in the book, I've interviewed moderate Muslims who don't want jihad, who don't want Sharia. And they say, look, you have to blur my face and disguise my voice if I'm going to speak out about this, because I'm scared, because my family will kill me if I say this. Eric, you don't know. The Muslim Brotherhood are the gatekeepers at American mosques. I've interviewed people in the Boston area who said, look, started out pretty moderate mosque, we were just there, we're worshiping, and all of a sudden these Muslim Brotherhood guys came in and they're providing their ideology, and they slowly muscled us out. More and more of their followers came, and all of a sudden it was a Brotherhood mosque. I document in the book how this is one of the Brotherhood's game plans for America. It's a three-pronged strategy, and we know this again from their own documents. And did I mention our government has these documents in its possession? Yet instead of crushing this inherently anti-American group, opposed to every value we hold dear, we're embracing them and empowering them. Why? In those documents, the three-pronged strategy it lays out. Number one, immigration. Demographic jihad. Number two, proselytize. Another way is the building of Islamic centers from coast to coast in America. Not every mosque is a terror hotbed. I know that. But many mosques in America, and I document this in my book, have been used, sadly, to launch terror attacks. And many mosques, sadly, not all, but many, do have Muslim Brotherhood ideology running rampant in them. I've seen it with my own two eyes, folks. I've been in mosques across this country and across Europe. I have picked up the literature and stared at it. The works of leading Muslim Brotherhood thinkers and ideologues. Hassan al-Banna, who we mentioned, and another name you should know. Google it because our government apparently hasn't. Sayyid Qutb. Q-U-T-B. He really, in the modern day, provided the framework for the endless jihad that Al-Qaeda and all its offshoots want today and what they're trying to carry out. Every Al-Qaeda leader worth his suicide belt, basically, points to Sayyid Qutb, Q-U-T-B, as their inspiration. Oh, he was a member of the Muslim Brotherhood. Not only that, he was their chief propagandist, and I talk to Muslim Brotherhood members today who say, Brother Sayyid was a great man, but he kind of just lost his way at the end. When he was in prison, he got radicalized. But really, Brother Sayyid, you have to take his writings in context. Oh, the ones to wage perpetual jihad until Islam reigns supreme over the world? Look, taking it back to the mosques in America, I've been on the ground in Muslim Brotherhood enclaves from coast to coast, and I have to tell you, it's a funny thing. Actually, it's a horrible thing. To go to a place like Nashville, Tennessee, the buckle of the Bible Belt, and see Muslim Brotherhood linked groups, concrete links. I name names in the book, I documented in the book. To see these characters building a multi-million-dollar mega mosques across 15 acres of land outside of Nashville, Tennessee. But Imam, I said to him, there's only 120 Muslim families in this whole town. Why do you need a 15-acre, multi-million-dollar mega mosque? He just smiled and he said, well, we had growing needs for the community. Imam, and I talk about this encounter in the book, where's the money coming from? It's all locally raised, my friend. Have a nice day. Now, I was at Friday prayers at this mosque outside of Nashville. And I have to tell you, I saw cab drivers, students. I hate to be judgmental, it didn't seem like the most affluent bunch per se. And a 15-acre mega mosque. It's kind of expensive. And I know, hey, cabbies here in DC, they work their butts off. I caught one over here to the Capitol. But that's a lot of money. Where's it coming from? I'll give you an idea. Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And I document in the book, look, people have testified here on Capitol Hill that according to some estimates, as many as 70% of American mosques have some kind of Saudi funding behind them. And it's very interesting because through the years, the Brotherhood and the Saudis have had an unholy alliance of sorts. And here's how it worked. The Saudis provided their petrodollars, provided the money. And they built mosques and madrasas, Islamic schools, radical mosques, radical schools, throughout Europe, throughout the United States. For decades, billions of their petrodollars. They spread it. Now, of course, you can't build a church or a synagogue in Saudi Arabia. You can't bring a Bible there, you can't bring a Torah, and you can't wear a cross or a Star of David around your neck. But boys, welcome in and build any mosque you want, anywhere you want. It's a very equal 50-50 relationship, I guess, between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia. Because they have oil. And they're using those petrodollars to build radical mosques. And who was staffing these radical mosques in Europe and America? Surprise, surprise, the Muslim Brotherhood. Saudis provided the money, the Brotherhood provided the imams and the ideology. An inherently anti-American, anti-Semitic ideology. And I'm sorry, Israel's enemies and America's enemies are one and the same. And Israel, in these jihadist view, if you're just thinking, it's Israel's problem, we don't need to worry about it. If you're thinking that, think again, because in Islamist jihadist ideology, whether it's Shia or Sunni, Israel is only the little Satan. Israel is a bump on the road to the great Satan, us. We have a bullseye on our back. And if anyone sitting here believes that if, God forbid, Israel was wiped off the map, do you really think that the Brotherhood or Iran or whoever would say, all right, the Zionists are gone, we can pack up our bags and go home now. We'll leave America, we'll leave Europe alone. Come on. Israel is the canary in the coal mine. As a matter of fact, it's the first line of defense for Western civilization. Israel's enemies are America's enemies, like it or not. And if Israel becomes embroiled in a regional war, is forced to defend itself against existential threats, guess who also will be targeted most likely? They see us as kindred spirits, one and the same. Personally, I kind of like that. But a lot of people don't. And I kind of like that because Israel is a lone bastion of democracy in a sea of tyranny. The one country in the Middle East that's, gasp, pro-American. I don't know, I mean, I think it might be a good idea to stand with those folks. So this is the situation we have with the Brotherhood. Sarah, how much time do I have?
another 5 minutes, and we should open
5
for
minutes,
Q&A?
that's fine.
No.
That'd be great.
As much as you want.
I've already-
Right.
Yeah, I'm surprised everyone's not mortified in their seats by now after this talk. But the enclave effect, which I talk about in the book, just to wrap it up, talking about the mosques, and in the book I call it Mosques, Enclaves, Victory, because that's how they view it. And mosque building from coast to coast is a crucial part of the Muslim Brotherhood strategy. The Muslim Brotherhood strategy. Not every Muslim, but the Muslim Brotherhood, like it or not, who are the most influential organization, not only in Egypt, but among American Muslims as well. They've muscled their way to the forefront, and they've intimidated any opposition. There's a reason that in the year 2000, there were 1,200 mosques in America. By 2011, there were over 2,100 mosques. So in the span of about a little more than a decade, the number of mosques in America doubled. Since 9/11, by the way. Now, when I look at the Muslim Brotherhood strategic documents, and they call for an increase in mosque building in America as part of their strategy, they call, and I quote, mosques, Islamic centers, the axis of their movement, where battalions are supplied. They compare mosques to a beehive, the center of activity for the Brotherhood and its followers. And first comes the mosque, and then comes the enclave. They use a mosque, does the Brotherhood, and the Saudis, as a beachhead for radical Islam. Now, it could be a neighborhood like outside of Nashville where there's a minuscule Muslim population. But they will build a mosque, and folks, if you build it, they will come. They build a mega mosque. All of a sudden, the locals say, geez, maybe there's a few Polish immigrants in the neighborhood, a few Irishmen, I saw this in Brooklyn as well, in a neighborhood called Sheepshead Bay, where a multi-million-dollar mosque was built smack dab in the middle of a residential street. Holocaust survivors in this neighborhood. And the group behind this mosque, another member of that alphabet soup, the Muslim American Society, who, not to get too sidetracked, but all you basically need to know is that our federal government, federal prosecutors, have named this group, quote, the overt arm of the Muslim Brotherhood in America. And guess what? They're building mosques across America. Our government knows they are Brotherhood. Yet our own federal government, the Department of Justice under Eric Holder, is intervening in these mosque cases around the country. Locals say, hey, wait a minute. These guys are like Muslim Brother, they're radical. This imam made comments about Jews, about America, wants to employ Sharia law. I don't think we want this mosque built. The Department of Justice under Eric Holder directly intervened in dozens of cases I talk about in the book. The Obama administration has directly intervened in dozens of cases and rammed these radical mosques through. The fox is guarding the hen house, and I go back to Mohammed Majid, who I mentioned earlier. Remember Islam? Hard to forget. Mohammed Majid is a guy who last year at a White House, I believe it was a Ramadan iftar dinner event. Funny thing, I look at the guest list and I look at the video of the event, and Mohammed Majid is sitting in the front row in front of President Obama. President Obama standing at the podium like I am now, and Mohammed Majid has a front and center seat. Even worse, for our country and our national security, Mohammed Majid and other of these Muslim Brotherhood connected individuals, Majid is advising our Department of Homeland Security. As a matter of fact, he's on a countering violent extremism group. Not radical Islam. Countering violent extremism working group, where Mohammed Majid has a direct pipeline to the Department of Homeland Security. And he's advising them on their counterterrorism and Middle East policies. And you wonder why our counterterrorism and Middle East policies are an absolute shambles that favor the Muslim Brotherhood. Have you heard the term, the fox guarding the hen house? Look, I gotta tell you, I know I gotta wrap up, and I thank you for listening to me today and having me here. I thank Sarah. Real quick, we're up against it, folks. I'm not an alarmist, okay? I've lived and breathed this stuff for 12 years. I've been on the ground. I've interviewed these guys face to face. I've been in their mosques. I've been in their enclaves. I've listened to them. Isn't that a crazy thought? A journalist getting on the ground and actually seeking them out to get it from the horse's mouth? Instead of sitting in an air-conditioned think tank in D.C. and just, they're peaceful, they're moderate. I'm here to tell you, we're up against it. The Muslim Brotherhood is here. Their own documents say they are. So what are we going to do? Real quick, I have 2 recommendations before I sit down. Number 1, brand this group, not brand them, make this group. John Kerry, our friend at the State Department, can surely do this. A designated foreign terrorist organization, just like Al-Qaeda and just like the Brotherhood's Palestinian branch, Hamas. Designate them a terrorist organization. They are the modern godfathers of Islamic terrorism. No Brotherhood, no 9/11. Number 2, the Brotherhood groups here in America. CARE, ISNA, etc. Shut them down. That's very harsh, I know, and we have freedom of speech. But freedom of speech to me, when it extends to a group that is subversive, with terror ties to groups that hate America and want to destroy this country, when that's the case, I think we might have a problem. I don't like the 5th column effect that's kind of forming. We had it in the Cold War with Soviet agents here. That was also alarmism, right? They weren't here. Well, we have Islamist agents of influence here. So I thank you. I hope you read the book, and God bless you. Thank you.